The crystal walls of the Vorthon council chamber gleamed under harsh artificial light as Zethkar examined the datapad in his four hands. His crystalline skin shifted from deep purple to cold blue as he processed the contract details. The payment offer made his secondary heart skip a beat. 3 million galactic credits for a single kill, more money than he had earned in his last 10 contracts combined. This human must be very important to someone, Zethkar said to his handler, a thin Vorthon female named Sixara, who managed contracts for the Galactic Trade Consortium. Sixara clicked her mandibles together in what passed for a laugh among their species. Important enough that certain parties want him gone permanently. The target has been disrupting very profitable operations in the Outer Rim territories. Zethkar scrolled through the target file. Captain Jake Morrison. Human male. Age 32. Standard years, height 6 feet 2 inches. Weight 190 pounds. Brown hair, brown eyes. Captain of an independent cargo freighter called the Betty Lou. The physical specifications seemed unremarkable compared to other species Zethkar had eliminated over his 15-year career. What makes this human so dangerous that the payment is triple my usual rate? Zethkar asked. Sixara's skin color shifted to nervous yellow. The client insisted on including a special warning with this contract. They recommend extreme caution when approaching the target. She handed him a second datapad. The warning text was brief but unusual. Zethkar had never seen anything like it in all his years as an assassin. Subject exhibits unpredictable combat behavior. Approach with extreme caution. Recommend immediate termination upon visual contact. Do not engage in prolonged confrontation. Species demonstrates unusual tactical adaptability and resistance to standard intimidation protocols. Zethkar read the warning twice before looking back at his handler. This seems excessive for a simple cargo pilot. What has this human done to earn such paranoia? Morrison has destroyed 3 slave transport ships in the past 6 months, Sixara explained. He somehow tracks ships carrying illegal cargo and attacks them in deep space. The attacks are always successful, and he always escapes before security forces arrive. The trade consortium is losing millions of credits because of his interference. 1 human against organized crime syndicates? Zethkar found this hard to believe. How is this possible? Nobody knows. The few survivors from his attacks describe impossible tactics and equipment that should not work against modern shields and armor. Some claim he uses weapons that ignore energy barriers completely. Zethkar dismissed this with a wave of his upper arms. In his experience, survivors of failed operations always exaggerated their stories to avoid blame for their own incompetence. He had heard similar tales from targets who survived assassination attempts by less skilled hunters. Where is the target? Located now? He asked. Intelligence reports place Morrison at Kepler 7 mining station in the Tau Ceti system. He stops there regularly for supplies and ship maintenance. The station has adequate civilian cover for your approach. Zethkar accepted the contract without further questions. 3 million credits would clear his family debts on the homeworld and establish his reputation as the most successful assassin in the guild. The warning about the human seemed like unnecessary caution from species who had never encountered effective resistance. Humans were relatively new to galactic civilization. They had only achieved faster-than-light travel 50 years ago and still represented less than 1% of known space traffic. Their home planet Earth was classified as a Class M death world, but many species evolved on dangerous planets. That alone did not make them uniquely threatening. 2 days later, Zethkar arrived at Kepler 7 aboard his stealth ship. The mining station orbited a gas giant where automated platforms harvested rare elements from the upper atmosphere. Thousands of workers and traders lived on the station, making it easy for an assassin to blend into the crowds. He spent the first day observing Morrison from a distance. The human frequented a dingy cantina called Murphy's Place in the station's commercial sector. Morrison seemed ordinary in every way. He laughed with the bartender, played cards with other pilots, and showed no signs of the dangerous behavior described in the contract warning. On the second day, Zethkar positioned himself in the cantina to study his target more closely. Morrison sat at the bar drinking something called whiskey and talking to a Centaurian trader about shipping routes. The human appeared relaxed and unaware of any threat. "Another round, Murphy," Morrison said to the bartender, a grizzled human, with gray hair and artificial eyes. "You sure about that, Jake?" "You've got to fly tomorrow," Murphy replied while cleaning glasses with a dirty towel. "One more won't hurt. Besides, I'm celebrating a successful run. Delivered my cargo right on schedule." Zethkar listened to the conversation while pretending to examine his own drink. Morrison spoke in a casual manner that suggested no awareness of danger. His body language showed no signs of combat training or heightened alertness. Either the human was an exceptional actor, or the contract warning was completely unnecessary. After 3 hours of observation, Zethkar felt confident in his assessment. Morrison was exactly what he appeared to be, an ordinary cargo pilot who had gotten lucky in a few encounters with criminals. The trade consortium had simply overreacted to a minor nuisance. That evening, Zethkar prepared his equipment in his ship's armory. He selected a compact plasma rifle with variable power settings. The weapon could punch through most personal armor while remaining small enough to conceal under his coat. For backup, he carried 2 energy pistols and a molecular blade capable of cutting through steel. He checked the target's schedule one final time. Morrison planned to depart Kepler-7 the following morning for a cargo run to the Vega system. This gave Zethkar a narrow window to complete the assassination before the human left the station. The plan was simple. Morrison would leave Murphy's place around midnight, as he had done for the past 2 nights. He would walk alone through the maintenance corridors to reach his ship in Docking Bay 7. Zethkar would intercept him in the isolated corridor, announce himself according to Vorthon honor code, and deliver a single clean kill shot to the chest. By morning, Jake Morrison would be dead, and Zethkar would be 3 million credits richer. The contract that came with such an unusual warning would become another routine success in his professional record. Zethkar waited in the shadows of Maintenance Corridor C7, his plasma rifle charged and ready. The dim lighting cast long shadows between the pipes and ventilation ducts that lined the narrow passageway. His crystalline skin had shifted to match, the dark gray of the metal walls making him nearly invisible to most species. The corridor connected the commercial sector to the docking bays, and Morrison had used this exact route for the past 2 nights. According to station records, the human ship was berthed in Docking Bay 7, which meant he would have to pass through this corridor to reach it. At 11:47 station time, Zethkar heard footsteps echoing from the far end of the corridor. The Yegaso sound matched Morrison's walking pattern from his previous observations. The assassin raised his weapon and activated the targeting system built into his left eye. Red crosshairs appeared in his vision, tracking the approaching figure. Jake Morrison came into view, walking at a steady pace with his hands in his jacket pockets. He appeared tired but not concerned about his surroundings. The human wore the same brown leather jacket and dark pants he had worn in the cantina. Nothing about his behavior suggested awareness of danger. Zethkar stepped out of the shadows when Morrison was 20 feet away. He kept his rifle trained on the human's chest while speaking in clear standard galactic. "Jake Morrison, you have been marked for termination by the Galactic Trade Consortium. I am Zethkar of the Vorthon Assassin Guild. By the honor codes of my people, I grant you knowledge of your death before it comes." This was how all Vorthon assassinations were supposed to begin. The target would turn to face their killer, allowing for a clean shot to the center of mass. Most species froze in terror when confronted by a Vorthon assassin. The few who tried to run were easily gunned down from behind. Morrison did neither of these things. The human dropped to the floor and rolled sideways behind a large maintenance crate before Zethkar could finish his formal announcement. The plasma bolt that should have burned through Morrison's chest instead scorched the air where his head had been a split second earlier. "Well, that was polite of you," Morrison called, out from behind his cover. "Most folks just start shooting without introducing themselves." Zethkar adjusted his aim toward the crate, confused by the human's casual tone. Morrison sounded more amused than frightened, which made no sense for someone facing certain death. "Your humor will not save you, human. Surrender now and I will make your death quick. Thanks for the offer, but I'll have to pass." A projectile weapon appeared around the edge of the crate and fired 3 times in rapid succession, Zethkar barely had time to register the primitive firearm before solid metal bullets slammed into his energy shield. The shield flickered and failed completely, overloaded by the kinetic impact. This was impossible. Energy shields were designed to stop plasma bolts, laser beams, and particle weapons. They were not supposed to fail against simple projectile weapons that fired chunks of metal. Yet somehow Morrison's primitive gun had punched through advanced Vorthan technology like it was made of paper. Zethkar dove behind a support pillar as more bullets sparked off the metal walls around him. He activated his suit's emergency systems and tried to restart the shield generator. The diagnostic readout showed complete system failure. The shield would not function again without major repairs. "What kind of weapon are you using?" Zethkar shouted while checking his rifle's power levels. "Smith & Wesson 45, Morrison replied. "Old Earth technology, simple but effective." The human was moving. Zethkar could hear footsteps echoing through the corridor, but the acoustics made it impossible to determine Morrison's exact location. The assassin activated his thermal vision and swept the area with his rifle. Nothing. Morrison was not showing up on thermal sensors despite the fact that humans were supposed to radiate significant body heat. Either the human had some kind of thermal masking technology, or he was using the station's own heat sources to mask his signature. A metal object rolled across the floor near Zethkar's position. He looked down to see a small cylindrical device with a blinking red light. The assassin's combat training kicked in, and he threw himself away from the object just as it exploded. The blast was not large enough to cause serious damage, but the smoke and debris provided Morrison with perfect cover to change positions again. Zethkar found himself coughing and temporarily blinded by the dense gray smoke that filled the corridor. "Where did you get military-grade explosives?" Zethkar demanded while trying to clear his vision. "Made it myself from cleaning supplies, in the janitor's closet," Morrison answered from a completely different location than before. "Amazing what you can do with basic chemistry." More bullets whined past Zethkar's head, forcing him to retreat deeper into the corridor. Morrison was not just shooting randomly. Each shot was precisely aimed to drive the assassin toward a specific location. The human was herding him like prey. Zethkar reached a junction where the maintenance corridor split into 3 different directions. He could continue toward the docking bays, retreat back to the commercial sector, or take the side passage that led to the station's power core. All 3 options would give Morrison different tactical advantages. "You are trapped, human," Zethkar called out, though he was beginning to doubt his own words. "This corridor has no other exits." "Who says I need an exit?" Morrison's voice came from above. Zethkar looked up to see a ventilation grate hanging open in the ceiling. The human had somehow accessed the station's air ducts without making any noise. This level of stealth required training that went far beyond what a simple cargo pilot should possess. The lights went out. Emergency lighting flickered on a few seconds later, casting everything in dim red illumination. Morrison had somehow accessed the corridor's power controls while moving through the ventilation system. The reduced visibility gave the human an even greater advantage in the confined space. Zethkar activated his rifle's targeting laser and swept it across the corridor. The red beam cut through the darkness but revealed nothing except empty air and metal walls. Morrison had vanished completely. "This is not possible," Zethkar muttered to himself. "Humans are not supposed to be capable of this level of tactical thinking." A piece of paper drifted down from the ceiling and landed at his feet. Zethkar picked it up and read the message written in human script. "Tell whoever sent you that Jake Morrison doesn't run from anyone. Also, you might want to check your ship's docking clamps." Zethkar's blood ran cold. His stealth ship was berthed in the restricted section of the station, protected by multiple security systems. No unauthorized person should be able to access it, let alone tamper with essential systems. He turned and ran toward the docking bay, abandoning all pretense of completing his mission. Behind him, he could swear he heard the sound of human laughter echoing through the empty corridor. Zethkar reached his ship to find the docking clamps intact but loose. Morrison had not sabotaged them, but he had accessed the controls. The human could have trapped or destroyed the vessel easily. Instead, he had left another message painted on the hull in bright red letters. "Nice ship. Try harder next time." The assassin spent 2 hours running diagnostics on every system before he felt safe enough to launch. Morrison's cargo freighter had already departed the station, leaving only exhaust trails and confusion in the traffic control logs. The human had filed a flight plan for the Vega system, but Zethkar knew better than to trust official records. He began tracking Morrison's ship using long-range sensors and intelligence contacts throughout the sector. The Betty Lou was surprisingly easy to follow for a pilot who had just humiliated a professional assassin. Either Morrison was overconfident, or he wanted to be found. 3 days later, Zethkar caught up with his target at Eridus Prime, a desert mining world in the frontier territories. Morrison had landed at the main spaceport to refuel and resupply. The planet's harsh environment and isolated location seemed perfect for a second assassination attempt. Zethkar studied the terrain around the spaceport through his ship's sensors. Eridus Prime was a world of red sand and jagged rock formations, under a blazing orange sun. The mining operations had carved deep canyons into the landscape, creating a maze of narrow passages and unstable cliff faces. Morrison's ship sat on landing pad 7, connected to the fuel depot by flexible hoses. Standard refueling procedures would take at least 4 hours, giving Zethkar plenty of time to plan his approach. This time he would not announce himself or follow honor codes. He would simply kill the human from long range and collect his payment. The assassin armed himself with a sniper rifle capable of punching through ship hulls at 2 miles distance. He positioned himself on a ridge overlooking the spaceport and waited for Morrison to appear. The desert heat made his crystalline skin uncomfortable, but Vorthan physiology could handle extreme temperatures. At local noon, Morrison emerged from the spaceport administration building and walked toward his ship. He moved casually, apparently unaware that a high-powered rifle was trained on his back. Zethkar centered the crosshairs on Morrison's spine and began to squeeze the trigger. The ground exploded beneath his position. Zethkar found himself tumbling down the rocky slope as tons of stone and sand cascaded around him. Someone had detonated. Explosive charges buried in the ridge, turning his sniper nest into an avalanche. He managed to activate his personal shield just before a boulder the size of a ground car slammed into him. When the dust settled, Zethkar lay buried under several feet of debris. His shield had protected him from being crushed, but he was completely trapped. The sniper rifle had been destroyed by falling rocks, and his emergency beacon was not strong enough to penetrate the interference from local mining operations. "You, sir, okay down there?" Morrison's voice called from somewhere above. Zethkar activated his suit's external speakers. "How did you know I was here?" "Saw your ship on approach yesterday. Figured you'd pick the high ground for a clean shot, so I spent the morning rigging some mining charges I bought from the local operations manager." The human had detected his approach and prepared a trap using locally available resources. This level of tactical thinking was far beyond what any cargo pilot should possess, even one with military training. "I could have killed you at the spaceport," Morrison continued. "Didn't seem sporting to shoot an unarmed alien, so I thought I'd give you another chance to reconsider this whole assassination business." "I cannot abandon my contract," Zethkar replied, though he was beginning to question the wisdom of continuing this hunt. "Your choice. I'll be leaving in about an hour. Try not to get too comfortable under there." Morrison's footsteps faded into the distance, leaving Zethkar alone under tons of rock. It took him 6 hours to dig himself out using his suit's emergency tools. By the time he reached the surface, Morrison's ship was long gone. The next encounter occurred in the Centauri system, where Morrison made a routine cargo pickup at Orbital Station Gamma. Zethkar had learned from his previous mistakes and approached with much more caution. He waited until Morrison's ship entered the asteroid field that surrounded the station before making his move. The plan was to disable Morrison's engines using an electromagnetic pulse, then board the drifting freighter, and complete the assassination in close quarters. Zethkar's stealth ship was faster and more maneuverable than any cargo hauler. The asteroid field would prevent Morrison from making a hyperspace jump to escape. What followed was the most confusing space chase of Zethkar's career. Morrison's ship should not have been able to perform the maneuvers it was pulling. The Betty Lou twisted and rolled through gaps between asteroids that were barely wider than the ship itself. The human was pulling acceleration forces that should have turned his internal organs into liquid, yet somehow he remained conscious and in control. "This is impossible," Zethkar muttered as Morrison's ship performed a loop that brought it directly behind the assassin's position. Human physiology cannot survive these acceleration levels. The cargo freighter opened fire with weapons that should not have been able to target a cloaked vessel. Somehow Morrison was tracking Zethkar's ship despite active stealth systems that cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. The human's weapons were as unconventional as everything else about him. Instead of energy weapons, Morrison used the freighter's magnetic cargo crane as a projectile launcher. Chunks of metal ore flew past Zethkar's cockpit at incredible velocity, each one precisely aimed to force him into the path of floating asteroids. "Where did you learn to fly like this?" Zethkar demanded over the communication channel. "Used to race cargo haulers through the rings of Saturn back home," Morrison replied while executing another impossible turn. "Amazing what you can do when you're not worried about safety regulations." The chase continued for 3 hours before Morrison's ship vanished into a dense cluster of spinning rocks. Zethkar followed cautiously, using sensors to track the freighter's heat signature. The readings led him deeper into the asteroid field, where visibility dropped to almost zero. When he finally caught up, Morrison's ship was gone. The heat signature had been a decoy created by venting plasma from the freighter's engines. The human had used the maze of floating rocks to mask his escape, leaving Zethkar alone in a field of deadly debris. A message appeared on his communication screen. "Getting warmer but still not warm enough. Third time's the charm, right?" Zethkar spent the next hour carefully navigating out of the asteroid field, while his ship's computer analyzed everything that had happened. The data made no sense according to known human limitations. Morrison was performing like a trained military pilot with access to advanced tactical systems, not a civilian cargo hauler. That night, while floating in empty space and running repairs on his damaged ship, Zethkar began researching human history and biology. What he found in the galactic databases made his secondary heart skip several beats. Humans had evolved on a planet where almost everything was actively trying to kill them. They developed as persistence hunters who could track prey for days, without stopping. More disturbing was their apparent inability to recognize when they were outmatched. Human military history was filled with examples of small forces defeating much larger enemies through sheer refusal to surrender. They had a documented tendency to turn disadvantages into tactical advantages. Zethkar was beginning to understand why the contract had come with such an unusual warning. The problem was not that humans were physically superior to other species. The problem was that they simply did not know when to quit fighting. Zethkar's pride as a professional assassin would not let him abandon the contract, despite 3 failed attempts on Morrison's life. He spent 2 weeks studying human psychology and combat tactics before planning his next move. The research revealed disturbing patterns in human behavior that explained Morrison's impossible survival skills. New Harmony Station orbited a gas giant in the Proxima system, serving as a major trading hub for the outer colonies. The station's complex layout and heavy civilian population would provide perfect cover for an assassination. More importantly, Zethkar had allies there who could help trap his elusive target. He contacted Vex Corlin, a draconian crime boss who controlled most of the illegal activities on New Harmony. Corlin owed Zethkar several favors from previous contracts, and the assassin decided to call them in. "I need 12 armed professionals for a simple elimination job," Zethkar explained during their meeting in Corlin's private office. "The target is a human cargo pilot who has been causing problems for the trade consortium." Corlin's scaled face showed interest. "Just one human? Why do you need so many guns for a single target? This particular human has proven difficult to corner. I want overwhelming force to ensure success." The crime boss agreed to provide the muscle in exchange for clearing his debt to the assassin. Within hours, Zethkar had positioned gunmen throughout the station's commercial district. Every exit was covered, every escape route blocked. When Morrison arrived for his scheduled supply run, he would walk into a perfectly coordinated trap. The Betty Lou docked at Bay 12 exactly on schedule. Morrison emerged from his ship and headed directly toward the commercial sector, apparently unaware of the danger waiting for him. He walked through the crowded marketplace with the same casual confidence Zethkar had observed at Kepler 7. Zethkar activated his communication device and spoke to his hired guns. "Target is moving towards Sector 7. Close the trap on my signal." He followed Morrison from a distance, waiting for the human to reach the intersection where most of his gunmen were positioned. Everything was proceeding according to plan until Morrison stopped walking and turned around. "Nice ambush," Morrison called out loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear. "But you might want to check on your hired help." Zethkar felt a cold chill run through his crystalline skin. He activated his tactical display and tried to contact his gunmen. 3 of them did not respond. 2 more reported that their weapons had been sabotaged. The remaining 7 were confused and asking for orders. "How did you detect my people?" Zethkar demanded while drawing his plasma pistol. "Same way I detected you," Morrison replied with a grin. "You've been following me for 3 weeks. Did you really think I wouldn't notice?" The human had somehow identified and neutralized half of Zethkar's ambush team before the trap could be sprung. Even worse, he had managed to turn 3 of the hired guns into double agents working for him. The professional assassin found himself outnumbered in his own carefully planned operation. Morrison drew his projectile weapon and fired twice into the air. The shots were a signal to his own allies hidden throughout the marketplace. Suddenly, gunfire erupted from multiple directions as the remaining hired guns found themselves under attack from unexpected angles. What followed was complete chaos. Civilians screamed and ran for cover while armed figures exchanged fire across the crowded market. Morrison moved through the battle zone like he had done this 1,000 times before, using vendor stalls and maintenance equipment as cover while systematically eliminating Zethkar's remaining gunmen. The human's tactical skills were terrifying to watch. He turned everyday objects into weapons with casual efficiency. A food cart became a mobile shield. Cooking implements became throwing knives. Even a display of decorative crystals became a source of sharp projectiles when Morrison kicked over the vendor stand. "This is not a cargo pilot," Zethkar muttered to himself while trying to find a clear shot. "No civilian has this level of combat training." Morrison seemed to be enjoying himself. He was actually laughing while dodging plasma bolts and returning fire with his primitive projectile weapon. The human treated the life-or-death gun battle like some kind of recreational activity. "You're getting better at this," Morrison shouted, over the noise of weapons fire. "But you still think too much like a soldier and not enough like a survivor." A plasma bolt barely missed Zethkar's head as he dove behind an overturned table. One of his own hired guns was shooting at him, having been turned by Morrison during the chaos. The careful ambush had become a complete disaster. Station security forces arrived within minutes, responding to reports of a massive firefight in the commercial district. Zethkar found himself trapped between security officers and Morrison's improvised army of converted criminals. His only option was to retreat through the maintenance tunnels before he could be arrested. By the time security restored order, Morrison had vanished once again. 6 of Corlin's hired guns were dead or wounded. The surviving gunmen claimed they had been attacked by a small army of well-trained soldiers, not a single human with a pistol. Zethkar made it back to his ship but found another surprise waiting for him. His personal computer had been accessed while he was away. Morrison had somehow broken through Vorthon military-grade encryption and downloaded files from the assassin's own database. The human had not just defended himself during the ambush. He had been gathering intelligence about the Trade Consortium's operations, using Zethkar's own equipment to build a case against his employers. Every contract, every payment, every communication with the crime syndicate was now in Morrison's hands. A message appeared on the computer screen as Zethkar watched in horror. "Thanks for the evidence. The Human Colonial Authority will be very interested in these files. By the way, you might want to find a new line of work. This assassination business doesn't seem to be working out for you." Attached to the message was a complete dossier on Zethkar himself. Morrison had researched the assassin just as thoroughly as Zethkar had researched him. The human knew about his family on the Vorthan homeworld, his financial debts and his reputation problems within the guild. Most disturbing of all, Morrison had somehow obtained records of every contract Zethkar had completed over the past 5 years. The human had enough information to destroy the assassin's career and possibly get him executed by his own people for revealing guild secrets. Zethkar stared at the computer screen while his mind processed the implications. Morrison had been playing a much deeper game than simple survival. The human was not just running from assassination attempts. He was systematically gathering evidence to destroy the entire slave trade network that employed assassins like Zethkar. Hunter had become the hunted, and Zethkar was beginning to realize that he had never been the predator in this relationship. From the very beginning, Jake Morrison had been the one in control of their deadly game. Zethkar floated in deep space aboard his stealth ship, staring at the tactical display that showed no sign of Morrison's freighter. 3 days had passed since the disaster at New Harmony Station, and the assassin had found no trace of his target. Even worse, reports were coming in from across the sector about trade consortium operations being raided by human authorities. Morrison was using the stolen intelligence files to systematically destroy the slave trade network. Every safe house, every transport route, every corrupt official that Zethkar had helped protect over the years was being exposed. The assassin's own success had become the weapon that would destroy his employers. His communication system activated with an incoming message. Zethkar expected another angry demand from his handlers, but the transmission came from an unknown source. "Hello, Zethkar. This is Jake Morrison. I think it's time we had a proper conversation." The assassin's 4 hands moved to his weapon controls while his eyes searched the scanner displays. No ships appeared anywhere within sensor range, yet Morrison was somehow communicating with him directly. "Where are you, human?" "About 50 feet behind your engine compartment. Nice ship, by the way. Vorthon design is really impressive. Impossible." Zethkar's stealth ship had the most advanced sensor systems available to civilian buyers. Nothing could approach within 100 miles without triggering proximity alarms. Yet Morrison claimed to be practically touching his hull. "You are lying. My sensors would detect any approaching vessel." "Would they detect something that was already attached before you launched from New Harmony?" Ice-cold fear ran through Zethkar's circulatory system. Morrison had somehow boarded his ship while it was docked at the station. The human had been hiding aboard his vessel for 3 days, watching and waiting for the right moment to reveal himself. "I could decompress your cargo bay and kill you instantly," Zethkar said while activating internal security cameras. "You could try. But I've already disabled your atmospheric controls. Besides, I didn't come here to fight. I came here to make you an offer." The security cameras showed Morrison sitting calmly in the ship's small cargo hold, still wearing his brown leather jacket and holding his projectile weapon. Somehow he had accessed life support systems that required Vorthan-specific technical knowledge to operate. "What kind of offer?" "The kind that lets both of us walk away from this mess alive and wealthy." Morrison stood up and moved toward the camera, showing his hands were empty except for a datapad. His posture suggested someone ready to negotiate, not someone preparing to attack. "I know about your debts on the homeworld. I know your reputation in the guild is suffering because of our little game. I also know you're a professional who takes pride in completing contracts." Zethkar said nothing, waiting to hear what the human proposed. "Here's the deal. You help me fake my death and collect the bounty from your employers. In exchange, I give you information that will make you the most successful assassin in known space. Why would you trust me with such an arrangement? Because you're smart enough to recognize a good business opportunity. The trade consortium is finished thanks to those files you helped me collect. Their money will be worthless in a few weeks when human authorities freeze their assets." Morrison was right. The slave trade network was collapsing faster than anyone expected. Human colonial authority ships were already blockading known consortium territories. Zethkar's current contract would become meaningless if his employers were arrested or killed. "What information are you offering in exchange?" "Complete tactical profiles of every major crime boss, corrupt official, and wanted fugitive in this sector. Enough contracts to keep you busy and wealthy for the next 20 years. The offer was tempting, but Zethkar's professional honor would not let him abandon a contract without completing it. The reputation of Vorthon assassins depended on maintaining their word once given. I cannot simply abandon my mission. Guild. Law requires completion of accepted contracts, then complete it. Kill Jake Morrison and collect your payment. Before Zethkar could ask what Morrison meant, the cargo bay door opened and the human stepped into the ship's main corridor. He moved with confident steps toward the bridge, apparently unconcerned about walking into the reach of a professional. Killer? I said kill Jake Morrison, Morrison repeated as he entered the bridge. I never said anything about killing me. The human placed his datapad on the navigation console and activated a holographic display. The image showed detailed plans for creating a false identity, complete with genetic markers and official documentation. Jake Morrison dies in a spectacular ship explosion near the Vega system. John Mitchell, independent salvage operator, buys a new ship with the insurance money and starts a legitimate business. Everyone gets what they want. Zethkar studied the plans while keeping his weapon trained on Morrison. The scheme was elaborate but workable. Faking the death of a single human would be much easier than actually killing one who refused to die. You have planned this for some time, since our first meeting at Kepler 7. I knew eventually we'd reach this point where fighting didn't make sense for either of us. The assassin realized that Morrison had been manipulating their entire relationship from the beginning. Every escape, every trap, every narrow victory had been carefully orchestrated to bring them to this moment. You could have proposed this arrangement weeks ago. Would you have listened? Vorthon honor required you to make a genuine attempt at completing your contract. Now you can honestly say that Jake Morrison proved impossible to kill, so you had to find an alternative solution. Morrison was giving him a way to maintain professional pride while admitting defeat. The human understood Vorthon psychology better than most members of Zethkar's own species. What guarantee do I have that you will honor this agreement? Same guarantee you're giving me. We're both professionals who understand that reputation is more valuable than money. Zethkar considered the offer, while Morrison waited patiently. The human showed no signs of fear or impatience despite being trapped in a small space with someone trained to kill efficiently. There is one thing I do not understand. You fight like a trained soldier, think like a spy, and plan like a general. What are you really? Morrison smiled and removed a worn metal tag from around his neck. He tossed it to Zethkar, who caught it with his lower right hand. Captain Jake Morrison, Human Colonial Marines, Special Operations Division, retired. Tag confirmed Morrison's military service record, including 3 years of deep reconnaissance missions behind enemy lines. Zethkar had been hunting a decorated war veteran who specialized in survival and intelligence gathering. The cargo pilot identity was cover for investigating trade consortium operations. Your employers hired an assassin to kill someone who was already hunting them. Everything made sense now. Morrison's impossible tactical skills, his knowledge of advanced combat techniques, his ability to turn any situation to his advantage. The trade consortium had accidentally contracted the assassination of a human intelligence operative. I accept your proposal, Zethkar said while holstering his weapon. 2 hours later, they sat together in the ship's small galley, sharing a meal while planning the details of Morrison's fake death. The human had brought his own food, claiming that Vorthon rations would probably kill him faster than any assassin. One more question, Zethkar said while reviewing the false identity documents. The warning that came with your contract. Did you arrange for that as well? Morrison shook his head. That was genuine advice from someone who had encountered humans before. We have a reputation for being difficult to kill. Why is that? Because we're too stupid to know when we're outmatched and too stubborn to quit fighting when we should. Zethkar filed his final report with the Galactic Trade Consortium 3 days later. Jake Morrison had died in a reactor explosion while trying to escape pursuit near the Vega system. No remains were recovered due to the violence of the blast. The assassin collected his 3 million credit payment and added a personal note to his mission summary. Target eliminated after extended pursuit. Recommend extreme caution for future contracts involving human subjects. Species exhibits unusual tactical adaptability and psychological resistance to standard intimidation protocols. Suggest avoiding engagement. unless absolutely necessary. Jake Morrison officially died that day, but John Mitchell lived on to continue, disrupting criminal operations throughout the galaxy. Zethkar used Morrison's intelligence files to build the most successful assassination career in Guild history, while the human authorities dismantled the slave trade network piece by piece. The warning that came with Morrison's contract had been absolutely correct. Humans were dangerous not because of superior strength or technology, but because they simply refused to know when they were beaten.